Are you ready to face something that has no name but leaves scars? It's time to discover what lies beyond the light. Only if you are ready to face the deepest horror should you step inside. We're opening doors to a world where every rustle hides a dreadful secret, and every step might be your last. What evil lurks behind these walls? What dark forces awaken in the night's silence? What happens when your deepest fears begin to haunt your consciousness? Leave all hope and comfort behind. Turn on the light if you dare, and be ready to discover what hides in the darkest corners of your fear.
Jack was an ordinary boy, living in an ordinary town. His days were filled with the laughter of friends at school and the comforting hum of routine. He would walk the familiar path to the bus stop every morning, greeting neighbors and exchanging pleasantries. His room was a reflection of his life, filled with posters of his favorite bands, books stacked high on shelves, and a desk cluttered with school assignments and sketches of fantastical worlds. The walls were painted a calming blue and adorned with framed photographs of family vacations and birthday celebrations. Sunlight streamed through the window each morning, bathing the room in warmth and light. It was a sanctuary where he could escape the pressures of the outside world. But as the sun dipped below the horizon and darkness enveloped the room, a subtle shift began to occur. At first it was just a sensation, something he could not quite put his finger on. Jack would lie in bed, listening to the soft rustle of leaves outside his window, the distant buzz of streetlights flickering to life. But as he closed his eyes, he felt a chill creeping in, almost like an unwelcome draft. He dismissed it as nothing more than his imagination running wild after a long day. Yet each night the feeling intensified. Jack began to notice that the shadows in his room seemed to stretch unnaturally, as if they were reaching out to him. The corner where his closet stood grew darker, as if it were harboring secrets. He would often catch glimpses of movement out of the corner of his eye, but when he turned to look, there was nothing there. The unease settled like a thick fog in the pit of his stomach. He would pull the covers up to his chin, trying to keep the darkness at bay. His heart would race as he listened intently for any sound that might break the silence. The creaking of the house settling or the distant sound of a car passing by only heightened his anxiety. It was during these moments of heightened awareness that Jack began to sense a presence in the room. It was subtle at first, a whisper of a feeling that he was not alone. The air felt heavier, as if charged with electricity. Shadows danced in the corners of his vision, and the temperature dropped, making him shiver despite the warmth of his blankets. Jack found himself glancing nervously at the closet door, which seemed to loom larger in the dark. The more he tried to convince himself that it was all just a figment of his imagination, the more real it became. Each night he fought to keep his eyes open, battling against the pull of sleep that threatened to claim him. He began to dread bedtime, knowing that the moment he closed his eyes, he would be plunged into a world where the ordinary became extraordinary, the safe became unsafe. As the nights wore on, Jack's room transformed into a sinister realm where shadows no longer stood still. They began to undulate and writhe, coiling around each other like serpents, whispering secrets that only the dark could understand. Jack lay in bed, paralyzed by a growing paranoia, his heart a frantic drum echoing in the oppressive silence. The very air felt thick and charged, as if filled with the remnants of forgotten nightmares. As he fought to keep his eyelids from surrendering to sleep, he caught a glimpse of her. The witch, an indistinct silhouette shrouded in shadows, hovered just beyond the threshold of his awareness. The dim light from the street lamp outside cast eerie patterns on his walls, illuminating the outline of her form. Jack's pulse quickened as he struggled to discern her features, but they remained frustratingly vague, a swirl of darkness and malice, a vision that seemed to shift and change the longer he looked. He could almost hear her breath, a low, raspy whisper that sent chills cascading down his arms. As he lay frozen beneath his covers, Jack's mind raced with questions. What did she want? Why was she here? Desperate for escape, Jack squeezed his eyes shut, wishing the darkness away. But it was futile. The witch had made her presence known. Her lips curled into a sinister smile, revealing teeth that were jagged and yellowed, reminiscent of a predator's maw. The witch's fingers, long and claw-like, danced with anticipation as she began her ritualistic movements. The words, ancient and forgotten, spilled from her lips, wrapping around Jack's consciousness like a suffocating shroud. The witch would draw symbols in the air with her fingers, sigils that glimmered for only a heartbeat before fading into nothingness. Jack's skin prickled with the realization that her intentions were not mere hauntings. She was here to claim him, to use his body as a vessel for her infernal master. He could feel her dark magic entwining with his essence, a desperate bid to reclaim the boy she intended to turn into a vessel for the demon. The ritual was nearing its climax, and Jack was painfully aware that time was running out. Determined to fight back, Jack sought any means to break free from the witch's grasp. The witch moved with a grace that belied her grotesque form, her fingers weaving intricate patterns in the air, summoning forth shadows that coiled around her like loyal serpents. Each flourish of her hand sent shivers down his spine, as if she were drawing power from his very essence. The ritual's intensity escalated, and Jack could sense the witch's focus sharpening. He gritted his teeth, summoned every ounce of courage, and shouted into the darkness, "Leave me alone!" The words echoed futilely, swallowed by the witch's chilling laughter. She reveled in his fear, her eyes glinting with delight as the shadows surged forward, wrapping around his limbs like chains, pulling him deeper into her realm. Jack could feel the witch's icy breath on the back of his neck, her whispers growing louder, more urgent, as if she were beckoning him to surrender. But surrender was not an option. Jack clung to the fragments of hope that remained, seeking any sign of resistance. He recalled tales of brave souls who had defied the darkness, and he knew he had to channel that strength. He began to chant counter incantations he had pieced together from old books, his voice trembling but resolute. Each word became a lifeline, a tether to his humanity, pushing back against the witch's encroaching darkness. It ignited a spark within him, a defiance that began to push back against the oppressive gloom. The shadows recoiled at his newfound strength, hesitating for the first time as he refused to let the darkness consume him. But the witch, sensing her hold slipping, unleashed a torrent of power, her voice rising to a fever pitch as she chanted and gestured with fervor. The room trembled at her call, and Jack could feel the very walls vibrating with her dark energy. Jack fought against the tide of darkness, knowing that the climax of their battle was imminent. He had to hold on, to resist, for the fate of his soul, and perhaps the world hung in the balance. Her incantations echoing around him in a symphony of dread. "Come forth, my demon," she hissed, her voice like shattered glass, cutting through the thick silence. He could feel the shadows responding to her call, writhing eagerly as if anticipating the arrival of their master. Jack's mind raced, battling against the despair that threatened to engulf him. He could not let her win, he had to fight. "You won't take me?" The witch's laughter echoed around him, a sound that sent chills down his spine. "You think you can resist? You are already mine," she taunted, her fingers weaving intricate patterns in the air, summoning forth a dark energy that coiled like smoke around her. The room vibrated with an unseen force, and Jack felt himself teetering on the brink of madness as the shadows encroached ever closer. Panic surged within him, but he forced himself to stand firm, to fight against the fear that threatened to consume him. "Leave this place," Jack cried, his voice echoing defiantly. He could feel the shadows recoiling at his words. The witch's eyes narrowed, and she stepped forward, her elongated fingers stretching out toward him, crackling with dark energy. "You dare defy me?" she growled, her voice a low, menacing hiss. But Jack would not back down. He summoned the strength of his will, focusing on the light that flickered within him. It was fragile, but it burned brightly against the encroaching darkness. Drawing in a deep breath, he channeled every ounce of his anger and defiance into a single thought: he would not be a vessel for her demon. As if sensing his resolve, the witch unleashed a torrent of energy, her incantations rising to a fevered pitch. The shadows surged forward, a tidal wave of darkness crashing against him. Jack braced himself, feeling the cold tendrils wrap around his limbs, pulling him toward the abyss. He could hear the whispers of the demon, seductive and insidious, promising power in exchange for submission. But Jack remembered the tales he had read, stories of heroes who had faced the darkness and triumphed. "By the strength of my will, I command you to leave," he shouted. The shadows recoiled, writhing in agony as his words pierced through the thick veil of darkness. The witch's face contorted in rage, her eyes blazing with fury. "You cannot banish me. I am eternal," she screamed. But Jack could see the doubt flickering in her gaze, a crack in her fod. He seized the moment, pushing forward against the tide of shadows. "I am not afraid of you," he declared, each word fueled by the fire of his defiance. The shadows shrieked in protest, their dark forms twisting and contorting as Jack's words wove a barrier of light around him. The room exploded with blinding brilliance, a radiant force that pushed back against the encroaching darkness. The witch's screams filled the air, a cacophony of rage and despair as her power began to unravel. Jack could feel the shadows retreating, their hold on him weakening as the light surged forth, illuminating every corner of his room. With a final, desperate scream, the witch's form began to dissipate, her dark energy unraveling like smoke in the wind. Jack stood at the center of the light, heart pounding with adrenaline, as he felt the remnants of her darkness dissipate into nothingness. The oppressive weight that had hung over him for so long began to lift, but even as the witch faded, Jack could sense the lingering presence of her demonic master. He knew this battle was far from over, and he would need to remain vigilant, for the darkness would always seek to reclaim what it had lost. As dawn broke, casting golden light across his room, Jack took a deep breath, savoring the warmth of the sun on his skin. He had faced the witch and survived. With renewed determination, he vowed to prepare himself for the battles yet to come, knowing that the light within him would always shine, no matter how deep the shadows may fall. In the aftermath of Jack's confrontation with the witch, a fragile sense of victory enveloped him like the first rays of dawn, breaking through a long, oppressive night. The shadows that had once encircled his room retreated, fading into the corners where they belonged. The chilling laughter of the witch, once a chilling soundtrack to his nights, was replaced by the gentle rustle of leaves outside his window, the soft hum of life returning to its rightful place. The air felt lighter, the oppressive weight of the witch's presence lifted. He took a deep breath, savoring the warmth of sunlight streaming through his window, illuminating the remnants of his childhood sanctuary. The posters on the walls seemed brighter, the shadows no longer twisting into grotesque forms, but resting peacefully, like loyal friends waiting for him to play. Jack allowed himself to bask in this newfound peace, convincing himself that the witch was gone for good, that her dark magic had been banished. He envisioned a future where he could once again drift into sleep without fear, where his nights would be filled with dreams rather than nightmares. But just as hope began to settle comfortably in his heart, a chill crept back into the room. It was subtle at first, a whisper of cold air that brushed against his skin, reminiscent of the witch's icy touch. Jack's stomach twisted as he recalled the lingering presence of her demonic master, the dark shadow that had remained just beyond the veil of reality. An unease crept back, snaking through his veins like a bitter poison. The door, which had stood resolutely shut since the witch's defeat, now creaked slightly, as if inviting him to peer inside. His heart raced as he fought against the urge to investigate. Then it happened, a dark figure coiled out from the shadows, slipping effortlessly into the room. It was not the witch, but something equally sinister, a mere silhouette that seemed to absorb the light around it. Jack's breath caught in his throat as he realized that the darkness was not done with him. This was the demon, the very essence of the horror he had faced, and now it had come to collect what was owed. Jack's heart pounded in his chest, the sense of victory shattering like glass. The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. The demon's presence loomed, a reminder that darkness is a persistent foe, waiting for the right moment to strike. The shadows began to stir once more, and Jack understood that he would have to confront this new threat head-on, for the horror was far from over. The closet door, once a mere piece of furniture, now loomed ominously in the corner, a portal to a realm he had dared to escape. Jack could feel its pull, an unsettling invitation that tugged at the edges of his sanity. His heart raced as he faced the closet, feeling the weight of the night pressing down on him like a shroud. With trembling hands, he reached for the doorknob, hesitating for just a moment, knowing that beyond it lay the remnants of his nightmares. As the door creaked open, a gust of cold air rushed past him, and Jack's breath hitched in his throat. A darkness spilled forth, swirling like smoke, coiling around his ankles and creeping up his legs. He could feel the presence of the demon, an entity waiting patiently for its moment to strike. The witch may have been vanquished, but the darkness had not been eliminated, it had merely transformed. With every heartbeat, he realized that the shadows were not just a part of his past, they were his future, intricately woven into the fabric of his existence. And as the demon's whispers filled the air, Jack understood that he would have to confront this new reality, for the shadows would always linger, waiting for him to embrace the darkness within.